Picture a lump of charcoal, black and cracked, shaped like a small log. That is what it looks like. But it is not wood. It is paper. Real paper, made from reeds, rolled up tight almost 2,000 years ago. In the year 79, a volcano called Vesuvius buried a Roman town in Italy under hot ash. The heat did not burn this paper away. It baked it solid, like a loaf left too long in an oven. For 250 years, people knew these black rolls held words. Nobody could open one without it crumbling to dust. Then, in 2023, a computer read words inside a scroll that no human had ever unrolled. It never touched the paper. The story starts in 1750, near the Bay of Naples. Workers were digging a well when they hit stone that should not have been there. They had found a buried town called Herculaneum, hidden under 60 feet of hardened ash since the eruption of Vesuvius in the year 79. Digging down through a tunnel, they broke into a grand Roman house, full of statues and marble floors. In one room, they found shelves stacked with hundreds of small black rolls. At first, the workers thought they were burnt logs of firewood. One of them tossed a few onto a fire, before anyone noticed the shapes were too neat, too round, too deliberate to be wood at all. Someone finally looked closely and saw the truth. These were papyrus scrolls, the paper of the ancient world, and there were about 800 of them. Excited scholars tried to open a few by hand. The scrolls fell apart in black flakes the moment anyone touched them. A monk named Antonio Piaggio built a strange machine in 1753, using silk threads and weights to unroll the scrolls a whisker at a time. It took him months to open one scroll. Many others were lost forever, torn or crumbled by earlier, clumsier attempts. By the 1800s, most experts had simply given up. The scrolls sat in museum drawers, black and silent, for 2 more centuries. This is where our one question begins, and it never fully closes. Whose library was this, really? And what did the room full of scrolls actually mean? 2 rival answers have circled each other for years. The evidence for each keeps growing, but neither one has won. Some scholars say this was a personal library, a single philosopher's own working shelf of books. Other scholars say it was only a small piece of something much bigger, owned by a powerful Roman family with far grander tastes. Picture that single blackened scroll again, sitting on velvet under a bright lamp. Every new scan of it becomes one more vote for one side of the argument, never quite the final word. The first theory says the scrolls belonged to a philosopher named Philodemus. He lived in the 1st century before Christ and followed Epicurus, a Greek thinker who taught that a good life meant simple pleasures and freedom from fear. When Piaggio's slow machine finally unrolled a handful of scrolls centuries ago, nearly every one turned out to be written by Philodemus himself. He wrote about music, about anger, about what pleasure really means. That matches a private study, not a grand public collection. Under this theory, the room the diggers found was simply where a working philosopher kept his own notes and drafts, close at hand, the way anyone today keeps their laptop files. The second theory points somewhere else entirely. The Roman house where the scrolls were found is enormous, one of the grandest villas ever uncovered from that vanished world. Only a small part of it has ever been dug out, and most of it still sits packed with volcanic rock. Many historians believe the owner was Lucius Calpurnius Piso Caesoninus, a powerful Roman senator, and the father-in-law of Julius Caesar. A man that wealthy would not keep only philosophy books. Deeper, unexcavated rooms of the villa may hold a much larger library, maybe even in Latin, maybe holding lost plays, lost histories, works history assumed were gone forever. If true, what has been found so far is just the smallest corner of the whole shelf. For 2 centuries, neither side could prove much because the scrolls themselves stayed shut. That changed with a project called the Vesuvius Challenge, started in 2023 by computer scientist Brent Seals and his lab, EduSlab. Instead of unrolling scrolls by hand, they used a hospital-style CT scanner, the kind that looks inside a human body without cutting it open, to scan a sealed scroll in 3 dimensions. Then, they offered a large cash prize to anyone who could write software to read the scan. 2 young competitors, Luke Ferrator and Yusuf Nader, working with Seals' team, became the ones who finally cracked it, turning stacked digital layers into legible Greek letters. Here is the strange part, the part that makes this different from a normal X-ray. Inside the scan, the ink and the burnt paper look almost exactly the same shade of gray. Nothing stands out. So the team trained a computer program on tiny, tiny cracks and ridges in the papyrus surface, patterns too small for a human eye to notice, that show up wherever ink was once brushed on. It is a bit like how a smartphone can guess a word from the pressure and timing of your typing, without seeing the letters at all. The computer was not reading ink. It was reading the shape ink leaves behind. In October of 2023, Luke Ferrator, a computer science student working on the challenge in his spare time, spotted the first full word inside a digitally unrolled scroll. The word was porphyrus, ancient Greek for purple. It appeared in a patch of soft gray whorls that had meant nothing to anyone for 2,000 years. Word of the discovery spread fast among the small community following the project online. Weeks later, Yusuf Nader produced enough connected text to reveal a title. This was not a guess or a fragment. It was real, continuous Greek, sitting inside a scroll that had never once been opened, sealed shut since the day the volcano buried it, in the year 79. Once more, columns of text came through. Scholars could finally read what the scroll actually said. It was Philodemus again, writing about pleasure. He asks whether a person truly needs a lot of wealth and comfort to live a good life, or whether that idea is mistaken. He brings up music, too, debating whether it can genuinely change how a person feels, or whether that is only sentiment. It is a philosopher thinking out loud, weighing his own doubts on the page, the way someone might argue with themselves in a journal. For the Philodemus side of the argument, this felt like strong support. His own name and his own habits were sitting right there in the ink. But one solved scroll cannot answer everything, and careful scholars said so plainly. This scroll matches the earlier, hand-opened ones. It does not prove that every scroll in the room matches too. Only a small handful out of the hundreds that survive have been fully read this way, since scanning and untangling each one still takes enormous time and computing power. It is entirely possible that most scrolls really are Philodemus, and a few others are something completely different, tucked in among them. Nobody yet knows for certain, and the honest answer right now is simply that too little has been read to say which theory the whole room actually supports. Even among the experts reading the scans, there is real disagreement. 2 teams looking at the same swirl of digital cracks have sometimes proposed different Greek letters for the same word. Ancient handwriting is messy. Ink fades unevenly, and the software still makes mistakes a trained eye has to catch. Papyrologists, the scholars who specialize in reading old papyrus, argue openly online about which reading is right, correcting each other in public before anything is called final. That is not a flaw in the project. That is simply what real, careful research looks like. Slow and argued over, rather than a headline that arrives fully solved on the very first try. Meanwhile, evidence for the bigger theory keeps quietly building underground. Ground-penetrating radar surveys beneath the excavated villa have picked up shapes that look like more rooms, still packed with earth, never opened. A few charred fragments, recovered decades ago from a lower level, do appear to be Latin rather than Greek, suggesting a completely separate collection from Philodemus's Greek philosophy shelf. If a Latin library really exists down there, it could hold Roman history, poetry, or plays now known only by name, referenced by later Roman writers, but otherwise lost to time. Nobody has scanned deep enough yet to confirm it. The ground has simply never been fully dug. Think of it like this. Imagine finding an old, badly damaged hard drive from decades ago, and finally getting a handful of files to open. The first files turn out to be one person's work notes. That does not tell you whether the rest of the drive holds the same kind of notes, or something the owner never showed anyone. Herculaneum is that hard drive, except it is a Roman villa, and the recovery tool is a particle accelerator scan paired with pattern reading software instead of ordinary file recovery. Every new scroll opened is one more recovered file, and the whole drive is still nowhere close to being fully read. As of now, roughly 600 scrolls from that villa have never been unrolled or scanned at all, sealed exactly as the eruption left them. The unexcavated rooms below the dugout villa have never been opened either, out of care for what might collapse or be lost in the digging. Somewhere under that hillside in Italy, there may be nothing more than further Philodemus, or there may be lost Latin epics nobody alive has ever read. The single scroll on the velvet cloth sits there, half of it now legible in soft, glowing Greek letters, the rest of it still perfectly, permanently black. More forgotten history every week. Subscribe so it isn't lost twice.